it's an important lesson that, people shouldn't just regurgitate the plot of the first movie. Because we were in an era where every movie was virtually the same, and every sequel was virtually the same movie. I mean, Moonraker was Spy Love Me, but in space, instead of, and Jaws 2 is pretty much Jaws.
I mean, literally, Moonraker was written by Christopher Wood, who wrote Spy Love Me. It's virtually the same story. The villain's doing the exact same thing.
In space.
In space.
Well, to be fair, the aliens, the story to aliens, the story beats are almost identical to the first movie. They're just told in a bigger, in a way, in a different tone. But it follows the same dramatic structure.
It's really worth noting that Spy Love Me is really a remake of the old and Spy from the first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Spy Love Me is the only twice, and Moonraker is Spy Love Me. Yeah, absolutely.
But another thing about Alien that I thought was interesting is what was happening in like horror films, for instance, in Halloween. The female protagonist would be the survivor, and you have these very capable characters. Everyone thinks Captain Dallas would triumph or survive the onslaught of the alien, and that's not what happens. And I think that was something very interesting going on too at the time.
Well, he's one of the first people to buy it.
Right.
I mean, it inverts your expectations, which is what also is it's really hard now to look back on these films, and I talked about a little bit starting from the picture, but Alien, at the time, of course, Tom Skerritt was going to be here on the save the ship. So when he dies, and it ends up that it's Sigourney Weaver who ends up, and Jones, let's not leave out Jones, who saved the ship. He's completely unexpected, completely fresh.
And another thing Alien did that no film has really done since or yet, if you watch the opening of that film, now you have some slam bang alien attack, and that would be the pre-title sequence. If you watch how that movie opens with the credits over the planet, there's just this creeping camera over the interior of the Nostromo. I remember seeing that, just freaked out. Like, why is there nobody here? Why is that little bird thing going up and down the water? Well, what? And then the signal comes on, I was like, this is really going to be bad. And I'm scared already. No one does that anymore.
Great goals to score for that one, too.
Oh, yeah.
Also, the preview, you didn't see any of the movie.
Alien had one of the great,
great one sheet, great trailer.
I think IFC that recently did the 50 greatest trailers of all time, and like #1 was Alien. I mean, I remember that trailer, you watch that trailer today, it's the scariest trailer ever. It really is, with the sound and it's great.
There's also something about, the fact, ultimately it's a guy in a rubber suit, but it's just, such an incredible design, and the fact that thing is there on the set with those people really generates a very visceral reaction that you can't get from CG. I don't think I've ever seen a CG monster that was remotely scary. No matter how many billion tentacles are coming out at you, it's not as scary as watching something kind of shadowy coming out the corner that you really feel is actually there on the set with the actors.
Another big thing about Alien was the merchandising. Star Wars was this huge merchandising bonanza. And I remember the thing that I wanted the most for Christmas 1979 was Kenner's Alien. I mean, can you imagine that meeting? Yeah, there's a movie called Alien. We want kids to buy this HR, eager design, biomechanoid, sexual whatever that's going to slaughter everybody who lives in your house. I mean, that was the great thing. It suddenly became where it was like the licensing people never ever really paid any attention to the movie itself. They just wanted a toy,
It was also an R-rated movie.
It was, an R-rated movie where this thing kills people in every form that it's in, but kids will love it.
It was great to play with your 12-inch G.I. Joes back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
With no 2XL. And Rob, the Space Knight. Another great 1939 toy. Way back.
Sorry. You talked about how some of these movies always influence what comes afterwards. Alien influencing the look of other films, and Star Wars causing some of these things to change or get made. What influence did Star Trek the Motion Picture have? One that immediately comes to mind is this established precedent of turning TV shows into movies, and showing that you can do that.
And Man from Uncle did that as well.
I think it did launch. Obviously the difference after Star Wars was that a lot of these things that would have been programmers or B movies were the A blockbusters was definitely established by Star Trek The Motion Picture.
Yeah, I mean, it was, again, to reiterate, a huge hit at the time. I mean, it cost a lot. It was the third most expensive movie ever made because of all the effects problems they had. You know, they spent $10 million on the effects.
But
And they rolled the developer costs.
It shows you how badly people wanted to see that people saw that movie multiple times, you know, and I saw it, I think, at least 2 or 3 times.
I mean, it's a $43 million movie that made
It's almost like mass hysteria.
Well, also, I think the most significant thing Star Trek The Motion Picture did was it brought back your central cast. You know, you brought back all the actors 10 years later and allowed them to age. You know, it took into account that these characters, their lives had moved on. And I think that while the Star Trek film series was deeply compromised because the actors got too much say over the storylines and there was less and less money to make the films, and you didn't have real, say, filmmakers trying to come on board and make these things, it was very interesting that you saw our central characters be allowed to age, which I thought, I know you objected to that, you wanted to see them young, but...
I don't object to it, but the problem was that they weren't allowed to really age after the first couple of movies. They sort of talk about that maybe in the first 3 movies. After that, they're just sort of stuck in the same place, especially by the 6th one. You know, what the hell are they still doing?
Yeah.
You know, especially when you got like Chekhov, you know, these poor people still have to man the helm station, clean the toilets, and do
It's like Sue, which one was it? Sue has a daughter on the bridge, and it's like, that's like some out of left field. But I know what I'm saying.
Another thing that you point out is actually Star Trek The Motion Picture was very influential, but in terms of what it caused not to happen in a negative way. It changed the Star Trek franchise forever. It basically said, we're never going to attempt to do something like this again. And, you know, Star Trek 2 was developed under the aegis of the TV division, was given a very small budget, and even Charles Bluehorn, who was the chairman of Paramount at the time, basically, when he hired Mark Bennett, he says, you know, be honest, we're doing a movie. He says, I know it's terrible and ponderous. He goes, yeah, they thought balls is sexy. You know, he just was like, hated it, appalled by the money that was spent on the movie, and so Star Trek The Motion Picture really became, you know, a dirty word, and even to this day, you know, it's a punchline in the Star Trek franchise, at least until Star Trek 5, where Shatner gave him a new punchline.
That's all this thing.
But, it's hard to hear punchline. But, you know, the reality is that it was a film that had a very negative influence, and I think that, you know, everyone has attempted to emulate Khan ever since. And look, Khan's a great entertaining movie, but a lot of the philosophical and character stuff that they were, I guess, trying to do, and you know, that was the end of really Roddenberry's involvement with Star Trek for all intents and purposes, other than the beginning of Next Generation. Because at that point, you know, that was Roddenberry's project. It wasn't considered a success, and Gene was sort of ostracized from involvement in the movie, and occasionally, you know, he would be like sort of like the guy that they would go to and ask his advice and then ignore, you know, and it was really hard to show for a couple of years, and then ultimately, you know, Rick Berman. So,
well, after Star Trek 1, I think that the first movie came from a place of from an intellectual space, and from that point on, all the Star Trek movies seem to come from an emotional standpoint, including the new one.
But you know, it's also an important thing to mention about Star Trek The Motion Picture. The Star Trek The Motion Picture wasn't designed as a feature. It was a pilot for a TV show that they rapidly, because of Star Wars, you know, Star Wars was a big success, and they made Star Trek, well, it was just like Star Wars. But they didn't develop it as a Star Wars type project. They took a pilot script, and they tried to expand it into a movie, and it sort of cracked under the stress of it.
And you know, the original Star Trek movie was going to be directed by Philip Kaufman, the guy who directed The Right Stuff. That was the 1976 Star Trek movie, which very few people really know about that. He wanted to cast Toshiro Mifune as a Klingon. And this was a great filmmaker, you know, a guy on the cusp of making the Invasion of the Body Snatchers remake, which is one of the great horror films, and Right Stuff, which is just one of the great movies, period. And, you know, I think that would have been a great movie. And unfortunately, it was reduced to, you know, really just a rehash of some television episodes and a blown up TV line.